In France, and Europe in general, we have one of the most protective legislation. When it comes to personal data and privacy, nevertheless, new technologies, their development, and their new uses undermine and jeopardize these legal safeguards. To simplify, one could say that there are combined phenomena. On one hand, more and more data is being collected in different ways. As we surf the internet, as we use our mobile phones, and ever more in the future, because of what is known as the Internet of Things. Large amounts of data are collected, often unbeknown to people involved. So, data collected massively. Besides, there is a growing interest from different actors and organizations to exploit these data. That's called data analysis. And everything involving big data, which is a very public issue these days. At that point, one can really notice tensions between privacy protection, as it is under current law, and what they intend to do in practice. Typically, for example, for big data, the logic is to collect as much data as possible to then be able to analyze it, to infer new knowledge. But on matters and in directions that we don't necessarily know, when collecting the data, which goes completely against the law. Since currently, in France, and generally in Europe, the collection of personal data must serve specific purposes, which are defined at the time of the collection, and once these objectives are met, the data must be deleted. So, this is the complete opposite to what people who analyze data on a large scale intend to do. Now, I'm not suggesting that information technologies are inevitably a threat to privacy. We can also design new technologies aimed to protect privacy, and thus solve the sort of gap about big data that I just evoked. So ultimately, we could consider it as a subject of research on information technology. For example, to solve this large-scale data collection and analyze gap, anonymization techniques may be designed. We know, it is in fact statutory, that personal data protection laws don't safeguard anonymous data, since, by definition, anonymous data is not personal. When exploiting data massively, it is convenient to first anonymize them. But data anonymization is a very complex matter. What is it really anonymous data? This is a very elusive thing to define. So, today, a leading research topic in the field concerns robust anonymization techniques. The right to control our own data is also expected in France and in Europe in general. This is occasionally called informational self-determination, and like other rights, this one is being undermined in several ways, but particularly through the widespread use of algorithms nowadays, especially predictive or decision-making algorithms. That concerns a wide range of fields and even our everyday activities. For example, when it comes to the field of information, it is well known that, today, more and more people get their information through social media. But we don't always know the information obtained through social media is graded by algorithms. And we don't necessarily know how algorithms work. This can have a major impact over our right to be informed or over censorship. It was even brought up upon the US presidential election. Some social media were accused of bias when ranking information. favoring one candidate over another. And these accusations are reinforced as we don't know precisely how these algorithms work. But this is only one of all the examples. Regarding employment, for instance, it's known that some companies in the US use algorithms to rank applications. So this allows them to hire people without having to interview. Regarding insurance, we could receive premium offers calculated by user profiling algorithms. Same goes for bank loans. More seriously maybe, there is an emerging use of this kind of algorithms in police and judicial matters. As far as police, it's what's known as predictive policing. Many saw the movie Minority Report. And today, this dystopian kind of scenario is conceivable with the predictive police. Which is already implemented in certain counties in the United States. So, algorithms will be used to anticipate the areas and even the days of the week at greatest risk of crime or misdemeanors. So, police forces will be deployed during those hours and at those spots, based on algorithms. But then again, there are related risks, like risk of discrimination and stigmatization of some populations. So, the rather opaque uses of algorithms are likely to create new risks and to jeopardize certain rights, like those related to non-discrimination, to unfair treatment, let alone the right to be informed. I've just spoken about decision-making algorithms. But there are other situations in which source codes are integrated on trains, subways, planes, and ever more frequently on self-driving cars. Source codes make major decisions, but, in those cases, it would be even a matter of life and death. As self-driving cars, for instance, can decide whether to brake, accelerate or turn. Therefore, the questions we face today concern liability. Who is responsible in case of malfunction? When dealing with gigantic software including millions of lines of code, provided maybe by a range of actors, how to determine the dysfunction or damages were caused by a given software component, or generated by a particular subcontractor or supplier? Again, these are complicated issues involving legal notions like liability and compensation, and also technical issues as we must be able to analyze the concerned logs and to point out the area where the error occurred, and thereby the components and suppliers that must be held responsible. All this shows, as regards linkage between legal and technical matters, there are many difficult questions about software, about the technical tools that we currently use on a daily basis, that can raise complex questions concerning law and way more. So, one can argue that these are societal or even ethical issues. We hear more and more about robotics in the social context, in the medical field, or even in military activity, which raises ethical questions. Then it's crucial that not only technicians and policymakers understand these issues. The public in general must comprehend them as well. But most importantly, of course, the younger generations, the high school students. It really is an essential point in education today to make it clear. that these digital tools and new services bring up truly complex issues, legal and political issues, and also, in a broader sense, ethical issues. Concerning the treatment of large quantities of data, I referred earlier to technical solutions, saying that anonymization might be one of them. Concerning transparency, particularly in algorithms, this is a subject that initiates significant research work, and that arises highly important questions. For example, how to prove that an algorithm used to screen applicants, to determine which candidates will be selected for a given position, how to establish that this algorithm won't lead to discrimination. These are extremely complex questions, and to do that, it is not enough to disclose the source code. We must be able to analyze it and understand it. So now, there are movements, what is called explainable AI, or XAI. How to manage to explain the results of an algorithm, especially algorithms used in artificial intelligence, those based on machine learning. Nowadays, we often use algorithms based on machine learning that are able to make predictions or to establish connections, classifications, ties that are extremely subtle, sometimes highly accurate, but whose results we are unable to explain. That raises major challenges for those who use the results of the algorithms. And, evidently, that also raises certain issues regarding societal and political matters. Can we trust these algorithms in situations in which their results will lead to make important decisions that impact individuals? This also represents an emerging topic nowadays, and I have no doubt that it will become a major issue over the next decade.